88.9 FM.
3 minutes past 2 from the studios of 88.9 FM. It's another beautiful Monday. My name is Major Daniels, and this is welcoming you on today's edition of the Roundtable. As the world continues to battle with coronavirus, the number of fatalities continue to rise, the number of infections continue to rise, and then community transmission continues to take place. Now, government in Nigeria is in lockdown. That is trying to get people back to work, trying to face out lockdown, trying to see that some people get back to work and some businesses can take up. You can't blame government because the economy is seriously, especially in Nigeria, where over 90% of the population are employed in the informal sector. That is the sector that is not taxed by government. And these are people like the vulcanizers, the mechanics. These are people who earn their wages on a daily basis, and because of the lockdown, they have not been able to go to work, and so they do not have the required money to survive, in spite of the palliatives that government has been doling out. This seems inadequate. So these people also have to get back to their work. But government said there are things that should be put in place. People should observe some of the things that have been said, like washing your hand regularly, no handshake, no hugging, observing social distancing. Some of these things that have been put in place, and people should not go out without wearing face masks. These are some of the things the government said people should ensure that they do as people go back to work today. Nigeria is also seriously affected because 60% of our earnings is from oil, and oil has taken a major hit on the international market. Nigeria's burning light sells now at $5.30. In fact, no one is buying. That's the serious part of it. More than 12 million barrels of Nigeria's oil are stranded on the sea, in ships, in vessels. These are vessels that are hired, that have to be paid for from time to time, because Nigeria does not have onshore storage. So because of that, they have to keep some of this oil in vessels, and very soon there may not be anywhere to keep the oil. And like I said, the oil is nobody is even buying the oil. So government is seriously affected. Government's revenue has taken a nosedive. 90% of our foreign exchange is also dependent on oil. So we'll be talking about, I have a professor of biology in the studio this afternoon. We'll be looking at the angle of the restriction, the ease on lockdown. Then we'll also be talking economics as well. So Rotimi Ogunleye will be joining us in the course of the program. We'll be talking economics, look at some of the options that are open to government and to individuals as well. Let me welcome my studio guest, the Publicity Secretary of PDP in Ondo State, Mr. Zadok Akintoye. You're welcome on the program.
It's a great pleasure to be here with you, Mr. Dimiji.
Let me welcome Professor Isaac Adiba. He is a professor of biology and he works with Federal University of Technology, Akure. That is Futa. You're welcome on the program.
Thank you very much, sir.
You remember he was here, I think about 2 weeks ago, and he's back here now. It's nice to have you on the program. Let me start from you. Like I said, the easing of lockdown commences today. Now, some experts have said that some experts have expressed their misgivings about these. They've said lockdown should remain in place because there's some of the things that have to be in place, like the World Health Organization says that, one, there must be disease transmission must be under control. Number two, health systems are able to detect, test, isolate, and treat every case and trace every contact. Number three, hotspot risks are minimized in vulnerable places such as nursing homes. Number four, schools, workplaces, and other essential places have established preventive measures. Number five, the risk of importing new cases can be managed. And number six, communities are fully educated, engaged, and empowered to to live under a new normal. Now, when you look at some of these things, you agree with me that they don't seem to be in place. So, as a virologist, would you say that this decision to gradually phase out lockdown, which commences today, would you say it is justified?
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, the listed items by the WHO, to say the least, our country, Nigeria, hardly measures up to any of those items. So, in other words, with or without lockdown, we are fully at risk. Now, as a virologist, even in places where we have lockdown and where lockdown had been eased, example Germany, you find out that in a typical viral pathogenesis, that is the cause of the infection, viral diseases will always take the normal full course once it has started.
It will run its course.
It will run its course. So with the ease or relaxation of the lockdown idea, naturally, one should expect that there will be a spike in the transmission and thereby the morbidity rate, that is the rate at which people succumb to the infection. But
what about the fatality rate?
The fatality rate, if government is able to put some things in place, we might be able to reduce that. The only thing and the number one thing for now is just the awareness. The awareness is poor in the sense that we started late. I mean, the government started late. And then up to today, some people still believe that COVID-19 is not real.
Yeah.
It is real. So I would strongly advise that we pay more attention to awareness. Once that is done, then we'll be able to have some mitigating factors in place that will help us minimize the fatality rate.
Now, but the relaxation of the lockdown has commenced already, and some of these things are not in place. They are not in place. I came from Ekiti this morning. I was telling my GM this morning that I saw people on the street. We say that people should not go out of their house without wearing face masks. I saw people, Okada riders. I saw people without face masks. People walking in groups without face masks, and all of that. Now, with some of these things, certainly, like you said, there are risks of a spike in infection. Now, where does that put us? Because why I'm asking you this is that the World Health Organization predicts that 300,000 people are going to die in Africa. So when you put that side by side, as of now, close to 2,000 people are already dead in Africa. When you put that side by side by what is already happening now with the relaxation of the lockdown, what do you see as an expert? And the attitude of our people.
The projection could be minimized if and only if some of those mitigating factors as put down by WHO are put in place. But as I said, the government, I won't say it's reluctant, but the government is just not addressing most of these items. And that is why the issue of relaxation is so questionable at this time around. But then, Africa and indeed Nigeria cannot afford to be on a complete lockdown for too long. Okay. Because the analysis shows that many of our people are self-employed. Even right now that people are clamoring for palliatives here and there or something, we know that the palliative is like a window dressing affair. Many of the items are not getting to the wretched of the wretched in the society. And so, for as long as we keep these people at home, You remember I mentioned something the other time I was concerning food. Even whether there is COVID-19 or no COVID-19, the rate of starvation now is unimaginable. So now relaxing the
lockdown.
The lockdown is just to give people a breathing space, which naturally, from my own perspective, is a way of maybe fend for yourself for as long as you can.
But if experts are saying there are some things that should be in place before we get to that level,
yes.
And then we are at that level now, we do not have those things in place.
Yes.
For instance, one of the things I have here is that health systems are able to detect, test, isolate, and treat every case and trace every contact. Contact tracing is a bit questionable.
No doubt we are caught up in a web of very complex.
Hold on, Professor. Now, if we say, okay, let us relax this lockdown, and we do not have some of these things in place, definitely that means it will be difficult to flatten the curve. Now, if we are not able to flatten the curve, what happens is that there is a risk of the healthcare system becoming overwhelmed,
right.
And it could break down. If that happens, that portends a lot of danger.
It does, and that's why I said definitely we should expect a spike. But then, with or without relaxation of lockdown, we should expect a spike. But the degree or the height of that spike is what we should now target, which is now that we have relaxed some aspects of lockdown, then the next thing is in our usual, in our characteristic manner, now go ahead and do the fire brigade approach on some of those items as listed by WHO. For instance, the issue of creating more awareness, issue of hygiene and sanitation, issue of
ensuring that people are fully educated and empowered.
Yes,
yeah,
fully educated, and provision of food. Because even if we don't relax the lockdown idea, then and people stay at home, many problems will definitely come in, and starvation.
That's why security implications.
Implication
was already out. So, that is already out.
Yes, and then many other even health issues. For instance, some of our old senior citizens, some are having edema, that is swollen leg, because they can't even move around to exercise. But then we know
they can do that in their neighborhood. They can always do that in their neighborhood.
They can always do that in their neighborhood, but not as somebody who can walk some distance, maybe to see a friend on another street or in another side of the town and stuff like that. So for now, that's not possible.
Okay, so let me turn to Mr. Ketoye. Now, what are your thoughts about this relaxation of lockdown?
I think that it's become expedient that we find a suitable way of ensuring that we can keep our people alive while they are denied full access to their daily living. It's become also very, very important that our system's capacity to sustain itself long term has been fully exposed by this virus. And some of the takeaways we should begin to, as a government, begin to look at exploiting are: do we have infrastructural capacity to deal with life-threatening, humanity-threatening diseases like this? Today we are talking about COVID-19. What if COVID XYZ comes in tomorrow with a different capacity to even threaten or take the lives of people even faster and more? What do we do? So I think that the lockdown, we didn't prepare for it. For instance, the issue of COVID-19 came as early as December last year. Most nations in Africa believed that it would not come here, or just assumed that, it's not part of who we are. We are not going to get it. We are stronger than them.
There's a lot of misinformation.
There's a lot of misinformation in Africa. Today, somebody was still telling me that one very silly story that had no empirical, that had no tested, proven scientific, basis. So that's what our people believe. And I think, like the professor said, one key thing we need to deal with is information and educating our citizens. Citizens presume that this disease will not catch me.
One old man in my neighborhood was telling me on Friday that it's only those who drive air-conditioned cars. I picked him up in my car. He was telling me that today now he has walked under the sun, he has smoked a cigarette, and doesn't see how this corona
it underscores
get to him. I was shocked.
It underscores something that we have over time refused to accept in Africa, and I use Nigeria as an example. We presume that we are informed. We don't have systems that test the integrity of information that is available to us. If in this century people still believe that when it rains and the sun comes out at the same time, it's because a lion is giving birth. How many lions do we have in Africa? I mean, in Nigeria, how many lions? So it definitely cannot be. It must be the lion giving birth in South Africa that caused rain and so
or in Asia.
Or in Asia, and people do believe that as truth. So that's where that underscores why it is important for government to do a lot of education. Our people will not believe COVID-19 until they start seeing people dying in their neighborhood.
Just like in Kano.
It's when they start seeing people dying in their neighborhood, then there will be this panic reaction. And then you will find that people will, all the excuses that I have to eat, I must go out by all means. People will on their own
stay indoors.
They will tell you that it's better to be hungry than to die. And so until we are able to cross that ignorance barrier in the minds of our fellow citizens, the government will not achieve what it aims to achieve. Look, people still mingle on a daily basis.
I called somebody yesterday. He told me he was at a birthday party. I was shocked. Yesterday evening.
Look, I think,
and he came to see me afterwards. And when I was done with him, I had to go inside, take my bath, remove all my clothes.
Sorry. One thing I want to advise.
I was coming from a party and he was drunk.
One thing I want to advise government to do.
Heavily drunk.
What I want to advise government to do in information passage is that you must take things that people are already used to inform and educate them. For instance, the issue of Qatar in schools. There is nobody that has a child in a nursery or primary school throughout an entire term that does not see that child experience Qatar cough. So you need to take things like that and then use it to educate the people that this is the same virus. It's the same, the way your child catches Qatar and gets infected with some of these nasal diseases is the same way they will get infected with this. So when you are able to cross that barrier of getting the people to buy into or accept that information, a people that can accept stupidity as the truth can also accept the truth as the truth. So I think government needs to put a lot of money into educating our people and then taking the realities of things that are happening in states like Kano and making it national, broadcasting it national, letting as many people as possible see some of these issues. And that's when people will now say, okay, I need to really restrain myself. Most Nigerians have also, I think that in my observation of the events within the last couple of months, most Nigerians have begun to adapt their culture to a post-COVID or a present COVID and post-COVID-19 culture, where if you go out on the streets now, a lot of people use the nose mask. A lot of people would not, first time they won't even shake you, they will come with the elbow. I also do the same thing. So COVID-19 is retraining.
Because of our time. You want to say something before I turn to Mr. Rotimi Ogle?
Okay. What Mr. Zadok just said, I don't know whether we've seen some video clips of some chaps from over there. Now, people washing their hands.
Oh yes, we have seen it.
And then drinking and then doing ablution and everything with it.
With the same hand?
With the washed water.
Okay.
Right? So it's
bamboo corona.
Exactly. I mean, the the level of ignorance or illiteracy, it's embarrassing. But then, like he rightly said, if there had been serious awareness, ab initio, cutting across, the way to stem the tide will be much easier.
Okay, let me. Mr. Rostin Yogle joined us from Metogo. He's a chartered accountant. Let me welcome you to the program. Now, when you have an economy where over 90% of the people are employed by in the informal sector, and then you have a lockdown in place, government is under a lot of pressure to relax the lockdown so that people who earn their wages on a daily basis can get back to work. Now, what in a situation like that where it seems that there's no going forward, there's no going back, what advice would you give government?
Thank you, Mr. Dimeji.
Put in mind also that some of the things that WHO says should be in place are not in place if we were to relax the lockdown.
See, we are an unfortunate nation. We are an unfortunate nation because we have in our hands a medical situation that is beyond our optimum capacity. When you have a challenge like this, there's nothing you can do. You have to strike a balance between the two.
How do you do that?
Are you going to allow your people to die in droves? Or you allow them to be hungry for a while and then come back to normalcy? So that is where leadership comes in. Then it means leadership must be proactive. They must balance policy with provisions. So if they cannot do the two, then there will be chaos. Of course, the larger percentage of our workforce, they are in the informal sector. That brings to another issue, that we need to take some lessons away from this COVID-19.
That has to change.
If we are not striving in that direction, then we are striving towards doom Sunday. So the government has no choice than to lock down when they did. In fact, if you ask me, I would say it was too late.
Yes.
You understand? So why people are clamoring now? It's just a simple analogy. The only thing that can take your economic bowl away from your hand is the threat of death. When you see death physically, when you have a close check with death, it's normally don't need to tell you that you should stay at home when you will stay at home. But since that is not happening yet, government should continue to educate. And it's very unfortunate. Like I said sometimes on this program, I said, if we must stop, if we must rather address the problem in our society, we must go back to our educational policy, fund education, and criminalize it if we don't send your word to school. It makes people easy to govern.
Right.
It makes information dissemination seamless. When somebody washes his hands, somebody was telling you that there is a virus that is killing everybody. It has gotten to China, Germany, Italy, America, and all you could do is to call all of you, mingle in a very close environment, then wash your hands inside the bowl and begin to drink and bath with it. Does it make sense? Even if there is no virus, are you supposed to wash your hand and drink it? It doesn't make sense. So all those things can only be taken out of our society when government invests heavily on education. When you enlighten an educated mind, it takes special efforts, resources, human time to instill that information in that particular uneducated fellow. But when you have an educated fellow, it makes it seamless. I continue to thank someone like Chief Obafemi Awolowo. Most of the development in the Southwest, in terms of human development,
Right.
the man brought it, and that is the only advantage we have. And that is why people will say we have the economic power. If you have the power of education, you control the power of economy. It's as simple as that, because economy is driven by policy. So what I think government should do now, why they are trying to look at how to manage this very
They have already relaxed the lockdown.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. If they relax it, they must not relax on their enlightenment, education, and monitoring.
Yes, legislation proper.
The truth of the matter is that if you sleep for just 1 or 2 days, if the virus should penetrate more than what we are having now, you may end up, God forbid, picking the remains of some bodies on the street.
What you see presently around town, would you say that has been done?
The truth, you see, I don't want us to look away from our deficiency as a nation.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is that we have not been doing well in area of health, education, even security. So if we have not been doing well in the past, you don't expect that all of a sudden there will be surge of capacity that will absorb all these challenges overnight. It is not possible. That is why we are saying that why leadership must put on their thinking caps and begin to, professes solutions to all this problem, like local ventilator. I learned that.
Yeah, some guys in Plateau.
You understand?
And even Aushi Polytechnic.
Hey, what's government doing in putting funds into some of our universities, polytechnics, even technical colleges? Why do we have all these things in place, for goodness sake? The purpose of education is to solve the problem of the society, isn't it?
Yeah.
Then why are we having all these institutions in place? So that's why I said it is time now for us to begin to think. If we don't think, may we not be consumed by a dreaded disease that even more than this. This is the truth.
Okay, now
it's not a question of leadership. Leadership must stand up to this situation and make sure they address it now and later. Like he said, COVID-19 thinking and policy, they are very, very important. Government should look inward. Everything boils down stop at the table of the government.
Now I've listened to experts who say that we're more in trouble economically than government is letting us. Now, no doubt, this disease has inflicted a high, on the economic front. This disease has inflicted and is still inflicting a rising human cost globally. Now, IMF says that global economy will shrink by 3%, and Nigeria economy I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. That's from the World Economic Outlook released in this last month. Those are the statistics, and that Nigeria's economy will shrink by 3.4% this year, and will grow by 2.4% in 2021. But all that will be dependent on the fact that if this pandemic, if we're able to get through it in the second quarter, we are already in the second quarter of this year now. These are some of the things. These projections are dependent on that. Now, you must agree with me. Like you said, he was saying something before we came on the program. There are already changes to cultural changes, behavioral changes, and all of that. This also will affect the economy. There are people now who will tell you they don't want to go to shopping malls. They don't want to go to hotels. There are people who told, as somebody told me, there's nothing that will make him lodge in a hotel at this time. These are some of the things. Now, do you agree that government has been sincere, Nigerian government has been sincere, and they are letting on?
The truth of the matter is that we don't even need to wait for the statistics of the government for us to know how vulnerable economically we are. You don't need any government to come up and begin to read out statistics to you. I will give you one simple analogy. I will not even go to all these professional details. Nigeria economy is hinged on revenue from oil.
Yes. 60% of our earnings and 90% of our foreign exchange.
Yes. Even the 40% of the earnings that you ascribe to non-oil, you will discover that it is the activities within that is dovetailing into them.
Yes.
So if you now have the market where we derive revenue that we use to run our economy, if you have problem with that kind of market, what happens to such economy?
It's dead.
The truth of the matter, like I said, is that Nigeria economy relies heavily from revenue from outside economy. The oil economy is not controlled by our local economy.
Yes.
No. We have no iota of control by it.
Yes.
So oil economy as it is now is having problem. It has collapsed. That is the truth. Pandemic, this COVID-19 has exposed the vulnerability of our economy, so that it will recover by 2.4% as
in 2021. But that will be dependent on a lot of factors.
They have put in place the international factors. They have not even put in place the local factors that are militating against that.
One of the local factors will be government giving affected households and businesses grants and all of that.
The truth, wait, the process, apart from the fact that the money is
no, some of these things are already in place. The CBN is asking people affected households too.
No, I have clients who are looking forward to key into this window of opportunities.
Right.
Fund windows. You have to meet some certain conditionalities, which is true. Government fund is not available for just anybody to pick and go. Before now, what is the culture of business discipline of these so-called persons? I guess this is one of the reasons, or perhaps one of the factors or points that were considered before the Finance Act of 2019 was passed in February to address some challenges that are faced by businesses. So government is trying to right that wrong. Government is trying to use tax policy to make sure that they create justice, fairness and equity in terms of taxation and business laws. If they are trying to do that, have they really succeeded in doing that? In taking them all those small businesses out of the wood in such a way that they can have fund to, reinvest or recapitalize? So they are about doing that when COVID-19 sets in. It means we have not addressed the problem that are militating against business, that will not allow them to access public fund, that will not allow them to key into all the windows of
opportunities
that government made available. Are you getting it?
If I'll come to you,
if we now have the COVID-19 in place, that is adding to that. It means it has even suspended whatever you may have in your Finance Act for now.
But now, okay.
For them keying into it now is one issue. The second issue is even this. If you now key into it and you get the money for small business, 10 million naira. If you now get the 10 million naira, how will you build the market? What time do you have to even make repayment plan? All other factors,
in place that one day there is disruption. There are disruptions to supply.
All other businesses that have been affected that want to relate as
like I said, there are behavioral changes now.
So at what time do we now have to put all of this?
So I'll come to you, Zadok. Now let me quickly ask: how else do you think government can do this?
Mr. Remegi, honestly, the best government could do is to make funds available to people.
Okay.
But we will continue to say this. Do we have, if it were to be a country where you have already made statistics of entrepreneurs who have established line of businesses that are doing all of this, it will be easier for government seamlessly to just advance funds to them so that they start on time. And they will know the cluster of businesses they should advance money to, so that if we give money to business A, B, C, D, E, F, they are on the similar line of activities. That will know that if this one picks up and that one picks up and that one picks up, it comes around to create value and gets to the next level of commerce. Do we have that kind of information in place? No. So if you are now doing it, if you are giving money to businesses, what is the level of economic interconnectivity between all the businesses you are trying to pep up? If they come up, can the activities come up in such a way that it will increase the productive capacity of that particular state or nation?
That's the question. Now, let me quickly say this before I let Zadok chip in what he wants to say. Now, when you interact with the people on the street, like I said earlier, that it appears government is not. We're in more trouble than government is letting on. Now, when you interact with the ordinary people on the street, they do not understand this. I was discussing with somebody yesterday, and I told her that in Ekiti State, I read the broadcast of the governor on May 1 to the workers, where he was talking about the minimum wage and all of that. And she said, but government has money. They should be able to. I said, government does not have money. Maybe you don't understand. Government does not have money. Where does the money come from? The money comes from oil, from allocation. I said, government. Now, my question to you: how do you explain? How do you make the ordinary people, especially because another person was telling me yesterday evening that as long as my salary continues to come in, and this is a government worker. How do you explain?
Salaries will stop. Let me tell you, I went to give a lecture somewhere, and I wanted to make them see how small our economy is as a nation. I said 2020 budget, the largest. I said 2019, put it at 10 trillion. I said that's why they call it Appropriation Act. It is a proposal.
Yeah.
We propose that we will get 10 trillion in 2019 or 2020. I said as of this 10 trillion, let's say the actual receipt, what I mean by receipt is revenue.
Yeah, revenue.
The actual revenue that we're able to get had aid, loan, and all of it together. It has never exceeded 8 billion naira.
Yeah.
I said now, estimated 8 trillion. Thank you. I said estimatedly, we have a population of about 200 million people.
Yeah. More than that now.
I said estimatedly. I said divide 200 million by 8 trillion. I told the person, I said everybody in Nigeria per annum will get less than 60,000 naira. Divide our budget by it. That is the best way to make it available to commoner. I said, let's say we take our budget now
as funds and distribute.
All of us want to distribute it.
Take your own and let me take my own.
That is about less than
not pay for itself contained.
From January to December. That is whereas in Massachusetts, a state in US,
yes,
in 2019 has a budget of $42 billion. That's almost equivalent of our budget.
That's a state
in Nigeria.
I think
you understand. So it is not their problem. It is not their problem. You see, that's why I said everything boils down to education. An average person in US would understand what government policy is, which direction government policy is going, and how it is going to affect him. That is because the government of America made it compulsory for every child
to be educated. Compulsory.
So from from school pupil age to the time you get out of secondary school, high school, the government bears the cost of your education from beginning to the end. So your parent has no reason
not to put you in school.
Yes, they can't come up and tell government that I don't want to put him in school just because
the government of such nations understand the value of an illiterate. The value of an illiterate is greater than the value of an educated person. Because you need the weakest part of a chain is what determines the strength of the chain, not the strength of the bar.
Yes.
Once you pull the chain, that place that is weak is where it will break.
Yes.
And an average Nigerian presumably is educated, is not educated.
Even the so-called educated people who have the certificate.
That's why I said our educational.
Because the people I was talking with yesterday, obviously, they are graduates.
It needs to be changed. See, if you call yourself a degree holder, in every developed world,
and you don't even understand how the economy runs.
The way you should even handle issues. You are not the band to understand everything.
No. But on the one that you studied,
yes,
you should be a master.
That's one. Then two, because you have within you the training and all basic content of education. It should not be difficult for me to tell you me that I understand a little
to explain
to you. So when it now becomes difficult for somebody who understands that the largest chunk of our revenue comes from oil, is telling you, and that this oil, all of us go to Abuja every month camping and get our statutory allocation. For me, salary is.
And yet, you say asking for 30% minimum wage.
When the same person
and salaries.
When the same person is my salary will not be affected.
No.
You see that's ignorance.
See,
our education has not been able to cure ignorance. It is because it is not an applied education. It is read and pass.
Yes, read them.
I wanted to say something earlier so that we can put this in proper perspective for listeners. Right. I'm a business owner, and I've said this severally on similar programs here that I run an enterprise that has 24 staff at the moment. The truth of the matter is that as a small business owner, that business is dead because of this lockdown. We had a lot of funds that had not yet been received from customers, and then we had this lockdown. Customers are not going to come back and pay you for those sums when school resumes. If I'm not earning money, how do I pay the staff that are there? And whether I like it or not, it's either, and this is what businesses are doing now, it's either I lay them off like the Access Bank story so as to reduce my liability, or I keep them employed technically.
And implement a cut in their salaries.
Not just a cut. You are still employed. The value of just being employed even without pay in a nation like this where there's a huge labor force.
Yes.
So they still hold on, okay, I still have the guarantee of my job.
Yeah.
Though I'm not being paid because money is not coming. And this is why I said that what we've lost as a nation within this couple of months of the lockdown and the impact of this COVID-19 is probably greater than our GDP.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it's massive.
Sure.
Our economy runs on a day-to-day basis. And so every day that it doesn't function, if for instance 500 billion naira worth of enterprise is done in Nigeria on a daily basis and it is no longer being done, that means we are losing the value of that 500 billion. And so the impact on small businesses is massive. Look, for civil servants that are expecting to be paid, the truth of the matter is that rarely would you find a state that will be able to pay salaries.
Kaduna has already implemented the 25% cut
within
in
the next
salaries.
2-3 months, because the money they receive from Abuja is no longer going to be there.
Yes.
And the federal government will still go to the reserve to pick some money to keep trying to fund the economy in the hope that we can stop this thing. COVID-19 is not a short-term disease.
No.
It's a long-term culture change. We live with malaria. Malaria at the time killed a lot of people, but now we live with it. So we are going to live with COVID-19. For those that are insisting that this thing will not catch me, look, if I explain to you, the impact of COVID-19 is not just simple catarrh. It has the capacity to ravage the entire respiratory system, to the point where it bruises it so much that except a pipe is put in that place into your lungs for air to go there, you won't be able to breathe.
Yes.
So it's not like that catarrh that you are able to cough it up. It causes that soaring of the entire tract. And so the impact is massive. Our citizens that are saying kokomi, they must realize that in the cycle of life, there comes a time where nature finds a way of recalibrating itself.
Right.
And usually when nature recalibrates itself, it is not emotional. It is not moral.
Yeah.
People will be wiped, particularly people that don't listen, that are not obedient. Gone are those days when our fathers, when a plague comes, they ascribe it to the gods and they leave it like that. Whenever, maybe by divine nature, they are able to build a resistance against their disease, the society continues. This is the same thing we're having with COVID-19, whether it's man-made or natural. It's going to wipe out a lot of people. The number of people that have died is more than the certain countries. Countries like Barbados don't have up to 2 million people. Yeah. So technically, within this 6 months period, it has taken entire countries away from the world. It has reduced the amount of, look, people think that our population would escalate.
The number of deaths has not gotten to 1 million.
The number of deaths, even at 1 million, there are countries there are very, very, very many countries that have less than 500,000 people.
Yes, that's true.
So, and the impact of this disease will continue like that over a period of time. And so we have to learn to know that the greatest way we can solve this problem is education. Sure. It's difficult to educate a Nigerian. It's very difficult to educate because there are so many principles we've already believed from our tradition that makes it difficult. People will tell you, just drink this thing. Somebody will come and put a very false information.
Would you blame people for thinking that government has money? Maybe because of what they have seen over time, people in government, living, extravagantly and all of that. So there is always that belief that there is money in government. Government cannot be broke.
Government is broke. The problem is that
government is broke now
because the few people that take money from government usually deploy such resources in ostentatious living.
Yes.
So the general populace look at those people
and think that,
but they don't look at their own neighbors.
Yes.
It's the number of neighbors that you have, how poor they are, that determines how wealthy the country is, not the few people that have money.
Okay. Now. According to Mr. Rotimi, according to Future Ratings, Nigeria's break-even price for our oil should be $133.
Yes.
So that means we have been running at a loss.
Even at 55.
Yeah, even at 57.
Yes.
We've been running at a loss. Now that it is $5.30.
Okay.
And nobody's buying. More than 12 million barrels on the sea, stranded at sea.
Nobody is buying. Don't say $5.
Stranded at sea. And the problem is that these ships, they are being paid for.
Yes.
They will be paid for even if we are not paying now.
Yes.
And we don't have onshore storage.
Yes.
So, and we have to continue to pump because some of our oil wells are more than a decade old. And experts said when you stop pumping, it will be difficult to restart some of these wells. So when you stop pumping now, that means you can't pump anymore from those wells. And then if you continue to pump, we will run out of storage. Now, government has asked IMF for a loan. Can that cut it?
Honestly, it's a difficult time for us. It is really, really difficult time for us. But I think somewhere along the line, as we are majority of our workforce, as we are complaining, citizens, that we want to go out there, work, make our daily living, we have so many responsibilities that are not attended to, that we can always go out and, adhere to some health and sanitary, hygienic precautions, and that we can say true. The way we are, so many other persons around the world are always saying, are also saying that in China, in Germany, in Italy, America, and what have you. I believe that after this, there will be skeletal production activities that will commence. And when skeletal production activity commences, I want to believe that all of this will continue to ease off gradually. It can't continue to go like that. Otherwise, the world economy will lock down completely. So we are affected. The world is equally affected.
Yes.
The owner of a factory can't afford to leave the factory down for 6 months. By the time you are coming back, the setup cost alone will drain the entire resources of that company.
Right.
So skeletal activities will pick up. But the problem I have is that
but at the moment, I said the other time that Kaduna has already, implemented a 25% cut in salaries. At the moment, would you suggest that for government? Because it seems we're running out of funds, and the oil money is not coming.
You are not able.
The oil money is not coming.
I attended a public school. When we were growing up, the first kind of witty saying that we knew then was that necessity is the mother of
invention.
You see, I crammed that on my head. We don't need to advise any government.
Do you see Nigeria get to that point where there will be pay cut
for
civil servants?
We will certainly get to that point. That we say, okay, she will do this so that we can attend to this, and this. It is obvious. It is even difficult for anybody in public office now to mess up with public fund, because the civil servants are aware now that the fund is not just there. So you can't come around and begin to do it anyhow, the way you like. People will shout. Is it that they are shouting directly or they shout indirectly? They leak the secret to those who help them to shout, because they know that if the problem is an economic problem and there is lockdown in the finance of the state, it is the civil servant that bears the brunt first. So they must be the first set of people that must cry out. So this time around, we must all be the watchers of our economy. So it will get to that point, because they are aware, they are abreast of information as regards the funding of the state, that all of them will come to a very painful reality that, look, it's either we do this or we go back to those years when they will say house rent not for teachers, house rent not for civil servants. Otherwise, we must adhere to reality. Let us accept pay cut. All government too in other one. I read a book. That book is all about talking about the economy, financialism, talking about the economy of Nigeria, premised on oil. And in that book, his story was told that a farmer one day got to his farmland. He saw a special plant. That plant, he has never seen that plant before. He didn't plant, he didn't have the seed. The plant just sprouted. Naturally. So he looked at that plant, he discovered that it was economic plant. So he harvested it, took it to the market, he was making money from it. So the ground began to bring forth that plant. So he was getting the money, he was using the money,
spending it lavishly.
He was just enjoying himself. It didn't think of how to research in a way to retain the seed, multiply it, improve on it, and get higher yield.
Or redirect the funds from there into other sectors.
Yes. So it got to
like UAE is doing for tourism.
It get to a point. The capacity of the soil fertility to produce that particular species of plant diminished.
Right.
So what he has, his overhead that he has bloated by his ostentatious life, now was the problem on him. He couldn't get enough fund to finance it. So he went back worse than what he was when he discovered that plant. So that particular story captured the oil economy of our nation. So we slept for a long period of years. We didn't invest in research. We didn't even see.
But what you've seen now, would you say COVID-19 has woken us up?
It should.
Or are we still sleeping?
It should wake us up.
It should, not that it has woken us up.
Well, the years ahead will
know.
Tell us.
Okay, let me talk to Professor Adebayo quickly. No doubt, this is exposing a lot of inadequacies in our sector.
Sure.
Like I said earlier, God forbid if we are overwhelmed. Nations like the US, Italy, if those nations could become overwhelmed, and it got to the point that it is now, God forbid I will become overwhelmed with this thing in Nigeria. What advice would you give to government now, particularly regarding the health sector, on how to ensure a turnaround?
Thank you very much. This gives me an opportunity to once again re-emphasize the need to put certain things in place. In the last radio program here, I did stress the fact that, one, that personally it would be very painful to me if at the end of COVID-19, Nigeria cannot boast of 3 specialized health centers. What I mean by that is either hospitals or health research facilities, and then product development. Well, for the issue at hand, first of all, I would strongly suggest that government should look into that awareness, educating the people. We have talked a lot about that. Number 2, providing or creating an avenue where the populace will be able to have access to good food. Number 3, the issue of our law enforcement agents vis-a-vis manning the borders, either international or interstate. One is not so happy to see the porosity right now. Today you find out a trailer load of people from extreme north finding themselves in Ogun State or in Ondo State or Edo State. One continues to imagine how this has been made possible. Then thirdly, research and development. Right now, well, I don't know if there's any center so commissioned by the government to look critically into certain areas of COVID-19. All we read, all we see is that we are just waiting for other countries
so that we can import.
And it's sad. I think today is Monday. I think Saturday or thereabout, a state governor was already saying that he has spent billions of naira making tents, which he said is isolation center. And when you look at,
and then the isolation centers are open space.
And they just like our dormitory in the secondary school in those days. Exactly. And then the so-called isolation centers we have around are just like the old dormitories we have in our secondary schools in those days. Meanwhile, we know that infections,
disease progression
are always at various stages. Somebody is just,
you put somebody who has mild infection with somebody who has severe infection in the same hall. Let me call it that way, or dormitory.
The other time when we were shown the isolation center for Lassa fever people at FMC, it was embarrassing. And up to today, That's what we have as so.
Okay, because of our time is fast spent. Let me quickly thank you, Mr. Zadok Agitoye. Thank you very much for coming on today's edition of the Roundtable. Mr. Rotimi Ogule, thank you very much for coming, and Professor Isaac Adebayo, thank you very much for coming. This is where we draw the curtain on today's edition of the Roundtable. My name is Dimeji Danes. Thanks for listening.